Hello and welcome back to the Lap Down podcast, which has been described recently as not another Formula One podcast, which we enjoy because we are just another Formula One podcast in the ether of Formula One podcasts. But my name's Dan. I'm joined by Alex. We've got the Bahrain Grand Prix to talk about, and I think we might both have been banged.
Yeah, I think we were banged rain.
Bar banged.
We went to bang rain. That's a start to the pod, isn't it? Yeah, no, it was good. I enjoyed all 90 minutes or so of the cars doing circling bits. And to be honest, all weekend was good. Quali was also quite good. Funny what happens to racing when none of the stuff works and it all becomes a little bit of a shambles. But no, that was good. That was our best of the year so far.
Yeah, literally none of it worked. Across the course, I really don't know what happened. Yeah, who knows what happened? I doubt we'll ever find out.
That's the top thing on me on my grid is that everything broke. So we've got a little bit of chat of that to go through. We've got various shout outs to give, to be honest, because there was a decent list of good performers this weekend. So there's quite a bit for us to cover on that. I'm going to have a couple of gripes about a couple of things. That's unusual, I know. And then we've got a little bit of future gazing. And some wonderful social stuff, which we all loved. But we should probably start with the Grand Prix itself because there was a lot to take in. You couldn't watch it live and said to me I might just grab the highlights, and I pretty quickly said to you, no, watch this one fully. I told you not to bother with Japan, but I told you to watch this one in its entirety.
It was worth it. It was worth it. It was, as you said, it was a really enjoyable 90 minutes of Formula One motor racing. It was by far and away the best Grand Prix that we've had so far this year, by a distance. I mean, the other three don't even kind of come into the conversation in comparison to this one. I still think there's a lot to give for this 2025 season, though, which is something that I think we'll talk about maybe at the end of this segment. But it was good. There were cars running in very close proximity to one another. There was a safety car restart, which always just is nice to add into the mix of things to talk about. DRS worked, which was helpful, and there were enough cars in the same camera frame for long enough for it to be an exciting Grand Prix.
Yeah, well, there were a couple of times where I think we had 4 cars going into turn 1 together, which that turn 1 is already very tight for 2 cars to try and go into side by side. And we had cars coming out of the pits while there were cars going at full speed. We had cold tyres and fresh tyres, and Kimi Antonelli that will send it down the inside of anyone whenever he fancies. It was very nice, I thought, at the Bahrain Grand Prix to have a bunch of S's, a bunch of M's, and a bunch of H's on that timing chart when the timing chart worked, all at the same time. And that, I know it's not outside influence, actually. I was going to say it's a bit of outside influence, and we don't like that in racing, but it's not outside influence. That having every tyre be viable differently and having tyres play a role that isn't preservation for once and that there isn't one set strategy, look what it does to racing. I know that wasn't necessarily the only reason at Bahrain why we are happy that it was a banger of a weekend, but it has to have helped because you've got that order being scrambled, you've got cars coming through, and tyre offsets actually mattered, and it wasn't, I'm going to look after my tyres for 15 laps and then try and send it for 3 laps. It was, let's just see what happens with these tyres.
Yeah, no, I agree. And all the strategies worked, didn't they? They all kind of complemented one another, and they kept a lot of people in the contention for points and positions that wouldn't have otherwise been because they've gone onto the hard tyre and it's the worst tyre in the world, and therefore they've just dropped off the face of the earth, and they're not going to be spoken about anymore. So that was really good. It was good. It was nice. We said, didn't we? We said Bahrain normally provides a good Grand Prix.
Yeah.
The circuit's good. The conditions are good. The people kind of know how it works now as well, which I know we've spoken about, and you'd like that little bit of, something interesting is going to happen. But actually sometimes, and it feels like Bahrain's possibly the example of this, of one of these kind of more established new circuits, that they've got the telemetry, they've got the data. The guys know their way around it. They test there. They've got the tyre information. It just works because all of that stuff is there. And Bahrain's good. So good for Bahrain. And
Bahrain.
Thank you for just keeping this 2025 season, just the embers of this is going to be the greatest season of Formula One racing in the history of the sport alive. Because when you look at the results, it has been fantastic. If you were only given the kind of the finishing 20 positions at the end of each Grand Prix, you'd go, bloody hell, this is good. We've had different race winners, and Mercedes are back into it, and we've had teams have scored points that we didn't think they were going to score points, and where's Pierre Gasly come from? And that's nice, that's great. But if you've sat through those first 3 Grand Prix, you'd sit there and you'd go, bloody hell, I mean, kind of feel like we're missing a few bits from the greatest season in history. And my question to you about it, because we've still got time, we've still got a lot of races to go, 20 of them in fact, but how many more races do we have before this stops becoming the greatest season in Formula One history that's a shame.
It depends, I think, massively on how we're defining what that metric is. What's the KPI on that? Because there are 2 ways to look at it. We currently have again, 4 races in, we currently have a very active Drivers' Championship. Constructors' Championship, McLaren have essentially already won, and barring ridiculous developments or a bunch of DNFs or something, McLaren will run away with that, pretty early in the year, I think. Drivers' Championship, though, Oscar Piastri all of a sudden is possibly now more of a favourite than Lando, possibly, particularly when you look at this weekend. Those 2 could not have been more different in the way they behaved on and off track. Wow, and there's probably a bit of chat for that later, or maybe on Thursday, looking ahead into the next weekend. But currently, we've got a genuine championship battle, Drivers' Championship. You've got the likes... I mean, I'm not going to call it a 4-way battle. I think realistically, it's which McLaren is likely to pip that. Max seems to be going the wrong direction. George is kind of throwing himself in there. So maybe we call it like a 3-way where both Max and George are sharing that third spot.
Okay, I'll buy it.
By that definition, and if we go like what you said, if you look at the results on paper, if it stays like that all the way through, the racing might not be great, but if the racing's not great but it's giving us different winners, then ultimately, is this a championship season that we're looking for, or do we want 24 individual events? If we want 24 individual events, we're running out of time. Well, no, we're not running out of time because they're all individual. This is the thing, though, is because otherwise you don't get those 90 minutes that you start this podcast off and go, that was really enjoyable. Because again, look, this Bahrain Grand Prix was very good in comparison to what we've seen in the lead up to it, but we didn't really see a huge kind of amount. And I dare say, if Lando hadn't have kind of overshot his grid box by 3 centimetres, which Max Verstappen manages to spot out essentially looking through a letterbox, which is incredible, by the way, it would have been Oscar driving around with Lando driving around behind him, with George driving around behind them. It was probably Lando's little kind of cock-ups that caused that kind of front 5 or 6 to be exciting. Because Oscar wasn't... Well, Oscar just was there, wasn't he? He had the George weekend this weekend. Or to be fair, George wasn't really spoken about that much, but he had a proper Russell weekend, Oscar Piastri. I mean, so much so that we didn't even get full 1080p full screen version of Oscar Piastri taking the checkered flag from the legendary Luca de Montezemolo that could kind of just about dangle it in the breeze. Yeah, I've got a couple of things to talk on there. You've got me riled up with 2 things at once. I'm not going to bang on about it because I admit he's 180 years old and he is a notable person. So at least it's not like, why is Shakira waving the flag at the Grand Prix, right? They picked the correct person. Terrible waving. And at what point do we need to, and here's an idea for you, and we can sell this for millions, right? So invest now, right? I'll put a link on the screen that people can invest in, a QR code and whatever. What if, like canoe oars, how they're like attached to the boat. They're not freestanding. They're on a pivot point, right? So it's less effort at this side to sort of flop your oar about a little bit. Stop giving them a freestanding flag. Put the flag on a longer pole, on a little brackety thing, and then if they just wiggle their bracket, the flag's going to do better things. So when we've got the octogenarians waving the flag, we give them like the bumpers when you go bowling. I mean, the bloke was I know it was windy, but he was getting it all caught up in it. So he didn't wave a flag, he waved a stick, which is not what you want to see. Not that we saw it because we were watching a different battle, but...
Do you know, like, with the way that technology has changed things, and the fact that now we've got 5 red lights and away we go, or whatever Crofty says at the start, rather than like some old boy kind of like dropping a flag at the start. And obviously the lollipop in the pit lane is gone now because now we've got lights that sometimes work and sometimes don't. It's still quite mad, isn't it, in this kind of technological advanced sport that we operate in, with all of the stuff that we've got going on with track limits, cameras and stuff. We still get a 77-year-old Italian pensioner to turn up with a bit of cloth and a stick to wave it about in the air. How has that not become like just a digital banner across the line that he just has to sit there and just goes?
Because you can't chop up a digital banner to sell on F1 Authentics to 280 people a weekend. That's why.
Good point. I suppose as well, like, you do have to wave it slightly longer. You're not going to get that much kind of Nicki Minaj, are you, on screen if all you have to do is kind of press the button.
Yeah.
So, makes sense.
And then your other point there, I think, is an interesting one. F1 race direction from a TV perspective. F1 race direction full stop drops a lot of flack. The TV race direction recently has copped even more flack. And I'm curious to get your opinion on, do we always need to see the winner cross the line on big 4K, big screen mode, regardless of what else is happening with the other 19 drivers? Should that moment always be given priority? Or this weekend, it's the first time certainly that I think I've ever seen where the winner crossing the line was not given main showing on the telly. Oscar was put in little picture-in-picture box, which they've gone mad with this year because they finally worked out that technology that's existed for 40 years is available. And we were looking at a battle, lowercase battle by that point. It was sort of dumb, but it wasn't impossible. Battle for P2. Should that be the case? Should the winner of the race always be shown crossing the line, big screen? Or was that a better option that there was something more interesting than a bloke 14 seconds in front?
Do you have to play it by context? Is that the right answer to give here? Do you have to? It's a weird one, isn't it? Because it's not like Oscar Piastri. That's not his 37th Grand Prix victory to the point that it's like, oh, here we go again. Is that his third in his career? I think. Is his third?
Yeah, third or fourth.
Third. So that's still quite a novel kind of feeling, isn't it? It's still new. It's still nice. The season's still young. We have got that battle on, and he would have taken the lead for the championship if Norris hadn't picked up that final spot at the closing stages of the race. So that was quite a big moment, you'd think. But had it have been, say, this isn't picking on him, but had it have been Max 2 years ago at Hungary or whatever, and he's won his 43rd Grand Prix to not even equal a record or whatever, just get one race closer to the next kind of rung on the ladder. Is it important? I don't know. You'd be disappointed if you were Oliver Bearman and you just won your very first Grand Prix and you crossed the line and you got a tiny little stamp in the top left-hand corner of your TV with your mum and dad back in Essex watching it whilst they're worrying about who's going to overtake who for 7th place coming around the kind of corner 4 out from the finish line.
Yeah.
So I think you have to play a little bit by ear as to what happens. But because otherwise you kind of cut to it. You just go, Oscar Piastri wins, bam, we're going straight back to where we want to go because this is more exciting type thing. Or do you stick him on screen? You go, here he is, and he drives over to the pit lane and he goes, whee, and takes his foot off the accelerator and just drifts down the start-finish line. And then you've got two cars like neck and neck, side by side, and Apex GPing it around the corner.
Well, that's my thing. I don't think we need to get sentimental about showing that on the big screen because that's still being recorded. If Oscar wants that to put in a DVD for his mum, that's been filmed and recorded. It's just not gone out big screen live. But they'd been tracking that Norris and George battle for 3 or 4 laps by that point.
Yeah.
And I think, okay, you don't really dive bomb into turn 13 or 14 or whatever they call it there at Bahrain. But he could have, because he was close enough to, if he'd have just gone, you know what, no, I want second, and I'm going to Max Verstappen it that either I finish second or neither of us finish.
Yeah.
He could have done that. He was close enough to do that. If that had happened and we were watching Oscar Piastri, as you say, lift off and just pull over next to some blokes shaking their fist at him, I think there'd be uproar. That if we'd not seen it at all, different story.
Yeah.
But putting it in pip, I think is, for me, a nice compromise. Because at that moment, putting sentimentality aside, and as you say, if it is Ollie Behrman, I think it's a different story. Charles Leclerc at Monaco, different story if there's a big narrative around it.
Yeah.
Third Grand Prix win is...
This is somebody's 50th Grand Prix win. They've equalled with Ayrton Senna or whatever that looks like. There's so much kind of context that you can add to it. But, I mean, at the end of the day, whatever somebody does is going to be wrong in somebody else's eyes. And I think that's probably the hardest thing to deal with. Is it the same TV director every week? Or do we get different TV directors each week?
It's certainly the same production, apart from Monaco, because Monaco insists... Well, Monaco might not even insist on that anymore. Monaco, for a long time, insisted on having their own local crew. It's certainly the same production company, if you like. I think Formula One do it in-house, but it's their people. Whether it's the same chap or chapette in the chair, I don't know. What I will also say, having done this a little bit at uni on a very, very small scale, people do not realise how hard TV direction is as a job for, football or cricket, where you know where the action is and the action is all focused on the same spot. I think people underestimate the job that TV director has to do with tracking 20 drivers, having 20 narratives spread out on the track and trying to jump between them and replays and data and all the rest of it. Yeah. That's a bloody hard job.
I think that's generally true for a lot of people in every walk of life. I think regardless of whatever job somebody's doing, I think there'll always be a comment of, oh, that looks easy.
Yeah.
Having never actually kind of stepped foot in somebody's shoes. But I do agree with you, and I do kind of validate your point with regards to TV direction. I think, yes, it probably is a very hard and very stressful job. And I'm sure there's a TV director somewhere that looks at somebody else and goes, God, that looks like a doddle, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And actually, without doing it, you're never going to know. So, yeah. Maybe just appreciate people a bit more.
Yeah.
Generally. Not just TV directors.
Let's just not be dicks.
Just be nice.
Be nice.
Be nice for a change. What else do you want to talk about anyway? What else
I'd like to get your opinion on Mr. Russell, and specifically Mr. Russell. So he races for Mercedes.
Was he the bloke who turned up to the old boy's house in that Disney film with a couple of balloons?
He took his shirt off in the cool-down room to really cool down.
Oh, Gorgeous George.
Gorgeous George. Georgie. Thoughts on George Russell I'm not going to say getting away with, because that's leading the witness a little bit. Thoughts on George Russell not ultimately being penalised as a result of that investigation for the apparent accidental opening of the DRS?
They said, didn't they, subsequently, that he gained 0.2 but gave back 0.28 or something.
He certainly gained. It was open for 70 metres on a 700-metre straight or something like that.
How they've worked that out, I don't think anybody who listens to this podcast or watches Formula One on the telly is going to be intelligent enough to realise as to what kind of
have worked it out.
Data and algorithms and stuff that they'll have in there. But it's quite nice, though, when things don't work properly. It genuinely is, because again, it adds another little kind of talking point to things. At the end of the day, if the information and the data comes back and says that he hasn't gained an advantage from it, why can it not be a manual thing? Why can it not be you have to manually press the button on and off, and don't do it in the wrong time, because then you are in trouble. Don't lock it for them when it's not available. Like if you want to use your DRS and you're 3 seconds behind somebody going down the start finish straight, go for it. But we're going to give you a 5-second penalty for it. But if you want to, that's fine. So I don't mind the idea of the fact that the actual drivers have done a little bit more, if that makes sense. And I'm sure it's very hard driving a Formula One car around those circuits for an hour and a half in some hot conditions and stuff like that. But hey, if they've got to press an extra button now and again.
Well, the difference on George's one, I think ultimately why he got away with it this time, I think the fact he didn't gain a lasting advantage has helped him get that over the line massively, and I think that was very clever by Mr. Russell to lift off and to sort of self-report on that. But I think it's an FIA system that shat the bed, so that would be bizarre of the FIA, I think, to penalise a team for being caught out by an FIA systems failure.
Yeah.
Or certainly a supplied systems failure, whether that's the FIA or whoever.
Yeah, you don't think Mercedes developed their own...
No, well, they rely on, don't they, the information or the systems or whatever from the central pool. I think the only reason that I was pretty confident straight away that he's going to get away with that is the fact that it was an accidental, well, taking his word for it, which did prove to be true in that post-race.
Yeah.
He's pressed what is actually like an auxiliary team radio button. It just turns out that in your button mappings, that's also an auxiliary DRS button, which, terrible button mapping. I've configured enough game controllers to know that we shouldn't have dual keybinds. Why have we got dual keybinds for team chat and DRS? Like,
maybe there just aren't enough buttons on those steering
there
wheels.
are plenty of buttons on that steering wheel.
Well, maybe there just isn't. You've never sat in one. You've never pressed them all. You don't know. The other thing I've just thought of, wouldn't it be cool if they didn't have the little beep in their ear as well, and they had to guess? They had to gauge how close they were.
I know,
Am I
like
within a second?
their engineer.
I'm not sure. Do I press the button? Don't I press the button? It's going to be tight. I'm going to go for... Oh,
I think it would be better if their engineer to come there and now! Press the button! George! DRS!
I quite like those ideas.
The weird one for me as well was, and it seemed to go largely unnoticed, certainly went unnoticed on the broadcast, Charles Leclerc did it as well, for less time and going through a corner, which is not when you want to be opening the DRS, but he sort of waved at Lando with his rear wing at one point, and it's like, I think that maybe... The FIA would have known that, and I think that, again, maybe helps George Russell's case that, okay, we're now seeing... Their DRS was absolutely balked in this race, along with the timing tower and transponders and pit windows and all the rest of it. Okay, it didn't ultimately, I don't think, affect the result, because when George Russell did trigger that, he was running by himself, and if he did lose 0.2 or whatever, it was not... I know we don't consider, or the FIA shouldn't consider the outcome, and it should be the incident, but... I think all's well that ended well, I think, is what I would say. It would feel wrong, I think, for George to be personally nailed for that, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And, I mean, at the end of the day, it was nice to talk about him, wasn't it?
Yeah, my boy.
Because for the first time in 4 races, we've noticed him. He exists.
We've noticed him. He exists, and he scored me a buttload of points.
He's done well, to be fair.
Georgie boy.
Did you want to go on to that, or is there more to...
Just a couple of other quick shout-outs, because we're having a really positive podcast, and it's nice to keep this positivity flowing.
The Pozzy Pods.
On my
Up the
Pozzy
Pozzy
pod,
Pods.
I've got 5 big booms for Ollie Behrman. P20
boom,
to P10.
Boom.
First of all...
Ollie Behrman's in the room.
I'm sorry, I'm not coming off the long run on here, but I've taken a couple of steps back. Driver of the day, sort your fucking selves out, right? Why has Lewis Hamilton won Driver of the Day in Bahrain? Ollie Behrman's gone P20 to P10, drove really nicely, has pulled that from the arse of the grid to score a point. Hamilton started, like 8th and finished 6th or something. It's like, oh, well done, Lewis. Who's voted for him and why? Put your hand up and show you're working to me, because we're getting some bullshit Driver of the Days and I don't like it.
This is why people aren't allowed nice things.
Yeah, these people can vote in elections.
And it must be the only sport as well that kind of... that the fans announce the man of the match, player of the game, driver of the day type thing, because otherwise you'd end up with like the Manchester Derby and you'd give it to the bloke who hasn't even taken the high-vis bib off and done a lap up and down the touchline. You'd give it to how many, like they've got that 40-year-old goalkeeper, haven't they, Man City, that just hasn't actually played a game of football for 7 years but has got all these Champions League winners medals. It would be like giving it to him, and I think that's what would happen if this kind of system was allowed outside of it. So sort yourselves out, or on this positive podcast, the Lap Down podcast, the preferred driver of, or the preferred podcast of Franco Colapinto, one of the, I think he likes us, to be fair. I think he does. Anyway, we're going to start petitioning for that to be taken away from you.
Yeah, just bin it off.
Yeah,
I don't think Crypto.com or whoever sponsor it will be too happy. But
ultimately, we're going to have to sit there and we're going to give it to somebody who knows what they're talking about, and I hate that.
Commentator 3-2-1s, do it like they do in the...
Exactly.
Give it to the race director. That's like in Aussie rules football, Brownlow medal votes are given by, I believe, the umpires of that.
That's fine.
That game. They give 3-2-1s. So let's have the race director. You know what? Michael Massey. Bring back Michael, and his sole job is the Mikey Massey medal, right? It's the MMM.
The Mikey Massey medal.
And he just sits there going 3-2-1 every race weekend, gives it to whoever he wants. Tell you who's going to win all the time? Max Verstappen. Tell you who's going to come last? Lewis Hamilton. Right. We won't open that bag of worms. But yes, no, Ollie Behrman, well done.
It's called a motor race, Michael.
Great drive, Ollie Behrman. Just a good weekend, to be fair. Bortoletto's dropped off, but for the rest of the rookies, quite a good weekend.
That Sauber stinks, mate.
He does, true. It's hard to.
I don't
deal
think
much
we
with
can
it.
really judge him as a Formula One driver as to his performances because the car stinks.
Yeah,
And I mean, it really stinks.
Yeah.
We knew it would stink,
and
it
does.
stinks.
Yeah.
So good for Sauber for creating a stinky car and not giving your new boy a chance and potentially kind of crucifying the start of his career. The other person that's kind of really stinky, along with a couple of them, but Fernando Alonso is stinking the house out this year as well.
Yeah,
Big time.
He's just not doing anything. It's that.
No.
It's the meme with the stick, right? Like, come on, do something, Fernando. Like, he's
you know-
usually good for a surprise result quite early doors.
Yeah, did you see that? Obviously Aston Martin and Honda are going into partnership with one another, aren't they? The Honda are going to be their engine supplier, which obviously they're moving away from Red Bull. And whoever it was at Honda, I can't remember, but have said that they'll have an opportunity to provide input as to who they think should be driving those Aston Martin cars, which potentially is how Yuki ended up in that kind of Red Bull family, because it was, well, we think you should have one of these guys, otherwise we're not going to give you any engines.
Yeah.
So that, yeah, we have a say, but actually it's quite a big say because otherwise your cars aren't going to go zooms. So, and I was thinking, does that mean that we're going to see the end of Lance Stroll? But
No.
looking at it after 4 races, we're going to see the end of Fernando Alonso here.
We're going to see the end of Lance Stroll when he is bored and he decides he's had enough.
He looks bored.
He does. To be fair, he's coming out of his shell on socials. There's new social first Lance. I think genuinely, it's hard based on all of the chat and rumours and whatever, and it's always a rumour. I think there's a very genuine chance that Max does go to Aston Martin next year in place of Fernando Alonso. If I'm Mercedes, I've got George Russell that sticks it silently in P2 every week. I'm not getting rid of him. And then I've got Kimi Antonelli that is 9 years old and keeps sticking it like 2 places behind George and hasn't really put a foot wrong massively. A couple of the odd rookie errors. He's a 9-year-old. He's going to make a couple of rookie errors. But if Toto wanted his own Max Verstappen, I actually don't think Max Verstappen is his own Max Verstappen these days. I think it's Kimi Antonelli that... I think there's a chance for Toto to kind of throw his dick around and be like, no, I don't want you. I've got my boys. I've got my George. And I've got my Kimi. And I've got a reserve driver spot if you want, because Valtteri might go to Cadillac. Yeah. So if you want to come be my reserve driver, you can, Max. But
I quite rate that.
I
quite rate it.
Boss it. But I could see 26 Alonso going, yeah, I'm done. Like, that was great. Good comeback to Aston. Like, had some good moments, had some podiums and whatever. It's feet up on the French Riviera now. And Mr. Stroll Senior
50, Fernando
goes, here's all the money in the world, Max. Look, Adrian's here. He's enjoying the canteen.
But what if Honda want a Japanese driver?
At that point, fuck knows. Well, at that point, Yuki's leading it at Red Bull. So
yeah, true.
Yuki might be quite happy being Red Bull's number one.
Who knows? Who knows if Christian wants him?
Well, he's enjoying it. They're saying nice things. And well done, Yuki, as well. To keep this positivity flowing.
Points. Yeah.
First time both Red Bull drivers have scored points since Vegas last year. And Yuki, you can tell it's not coming easy, but he's getting there. And in a race where Max Verstappen finished 7th to have finished 9th, you know what?
Yeah.
Fair play.
Yeah. No, those 2 points completely justify the axing of Liam Lawson. 100%. There should be no doubt in anybody's mind that it was, by any way, shape or form, a knee-jerk reaction from Red Bull to get rid of him. So good for Yuki, and good for putting our mind at ease and rest to that kind of decision.
Particularly when Liam's now putting the car that Yuki was sticking like P5 in like P18 with about 40 seconds worth of penalties for hitting everyone.
That poor boy's nearly done, isn't he?
He genuinely... You mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. He's got to be careful that he doesn't get into like a death spiral of, you know, all of a sudden you tumble right out.
I think he's already there, mate.
I think
he's in it.
I'm not an F1 driving coach. I can barely make it around the track myself in F1 24. I can't help but feel like with what we're seeing, Hadjar is not trying to overdrive that car. He is driving within the car. He's enjoying himself and he's just trying to do his best. Because he doesn't really have to impress anyone, because I think he's already done that. The turnaround, by the way, from him crashing out pre-warm-up lap in tears in the paddock to now being really quite racy and looking really good. Well done. Liam Lawson, on the other hand, you just get the impression he's now really trying to overdrive that car. He is trying to be so aggressive with it, and he's going too hard. and it's too aggressive because he feels like he has to prove it. And I don't think that's the best way to drive a Formula One car, generally.
No.
Smooth is fast and fast is smooth and all that, or whatever it is. That feels like that's where we're at.
Back to the Pozzy pods.
Back to the Pozzy pods.
Let's get back to it.
Alpine. Wow.
Alpine, Pierre. Where did that
Doos.
come from? Genuinely, where did that come from?
All of quali, he was up the front. Like, it wasn't like, he stuck one good lap in and then everyone, tumbled down to P12 or whatever. He's up the front for most of quali, and then was up the front for a good chunk of the race and finished P5 in the end with
7.
7
with 6 points. Yeah,
banging.
No, it's a fantastic effort.
Jackie Doos, I think, is actually
didn't get lapped.
He didn't get lapped, but he actually had a decent enough weekend. He looked racy. He seemed smart. I think they fucked him a little bit with some strategy in this one that's probably not fully reflected the drive that he had. But I feel like he's just keeping the preferred driver of the podcast, Franco Colapinto, at arm's reach at the minute. He's clinging on.
Yeah, it feels like a performance that you can't suddenly go bye-bye. You're there and thereabouts. It becomes a harder conversation, I think, to have. And I still think he's going to be looking over his shoulder for the whole time.
Oh, yeah.
Until something happens or until this season ends, I think he's always looking over his shoulder.
He's at the very least now. He knows that he's being chased by someone.
Yeah.
He knows they're there. He can kind of hear the footsteps behind him, but he's in his stride now in his run, at least. He's not scrambling. He's not hitting branches and he's not tripping. He's got a nice gait to him all of a sudden that he feels like he's running as quick as the bloke behind. And then I think the last of the Pozzy pods, it doesn't reflect. Again, on paper, this doesn't reflect. It actually was another decent Williams weekend.
Yeah.
Absolutely not with the points they've come away with, and they've come away with half of the car that they started the race with. But Sainz sort of, I think, settled this weekend. I think being at a track that, as you said earlier, they are so dialed in on these drivers and they've done so many laps in or whatever.
Yeah.
They got the strategy a little bit wrong, Williams, and James Vowles said that on the telly, that we'd rather not be running the hard tyre right now, but it's kind of needs must. It's the tyres that we've got. And then Carlos had a run in and lost half of his side pod and then had to retire the car. But he was running quite well up until that point. By Williamsy standards, okay, it wasn't a barnstormer of a weekend, but yeah, I think you flagged it earlier. It was a good Willy weekend.
Honestly, whenever you can get your Willy out and talk about it on a Pozzy pod, it's fantastic. And they do look good. They do. I think they have got a very good driver pairing. We knew that. It's nice to see that Carlos appears to have just settled into it a little bit. Albon got points again, which is fantastic. There's a real shout for 5th place in the Constructors' Championship for Williams this year.
Yeah.
And it feels like if Sainz has found his feet there, they will finish 5th comfortably as well. Because I think they've got the best driver pairing of that kind of bottom half of the World Championship, haven't they? I don't think they'll have enough to catch Ferrari. I think Ferrari will finish 4th by themselves, and I think Williams could just comfortably finish 5th in a build-up for this 2026 season where they've developed this kind of Frankenstein, Hulk supercar thing that's just going to dominate Formula One for the next 15 years. So, good for Williams.
Yep.
Great to see the great team back, and James Vowles, keep delivering for us.
I love James Vowles so much. Just to show the positivity, every video I've ever seen, he just gets better and better. And the way he chirps, and then he did that pit lane chat with Ted where you could tell that he was absolutely fucking raging about the whole quali bollocks, which we've not even had a chance to get onto, but that was a disgrace. And you could tell that he was absolutely boiling over inside, but he keeps himself all composed in his shirt and he says exactly the right thing at the right time.
Yeah.
Right, anything else, or should we look at some points? Because I want to get to these point standings because they're looking good for old me.
I thought you might. No, let's have a look at the Lap Down Formula One World Championship spreadsheet, where random drivers are selected from a wheel of misfortune each week ahead of each Grand Prix. You went into the weekend with a decent lead, it's fair to say, and you've only extended it from that, which we knew, didn't we, to be fair? At the end of the previous episode, after I'd been drawn Fernando Alonso and Nico Hülkenberg. I did put 0 points down before the race before they'd even turned a wheel at Bahrain, to be fair, because I knew that was going to happen. And you picked up Gorgeous George.
Gorgeous Georgie.
The best Red Bull driver since Liam Lawson, Yuki Tsunoda. So you've added 20 points to your tally, which makes the standings 67 points to you and 35 points to me. So you have a 32-point lead.
You need to find some lucky charms come Thursday. You need to have a quiet word with the wheel, because you need a good weekend in Saudi.
It was tough. It was tough. What I will say, neither of us are doing particularly well in the Constructors' Championship, mind you.
No,
you're currently 4th.
Okay,
so you're ahead of Ferrari, but behind Red Bull by 4 points, I think. And I'm 5th. No, 6th, I guess, if Ferrari gets bumped down. So I would be 6th at the moment, ahead of Haas.
Yeah, you can leap off Haas, unless they keep having double pointy weekends like they had there. So
I need a decent spin next week.
Yeah, you need to decent spins next week.
The thing is, because this is utterly random, I've no idea what feels like unattainability. No. But 32 feels like 2 weekends already.
One of us eventually are going to pull a double papaya when the other pulls like a double Sauber, and that's just going to be a 50-point swinger of a weekend.
You've had a Norris and a Verstappen. Surely that's the peak to your season, isn't it?
Look, you would think in most scenarios, but that's not how the wheel works. The wheel does what the wheel wants to do.
The wheel giveth and the wheel taketh.
The wheel giveth and the wheel taketh. Right, I think that's Bahrain. I'm sure there was plenty of other things that happened that we missed there, but that was our takeaway from Bahrain. If you had takeaways from Bahrain, you can email lapdownpod@gmail.com and tell us what we missed or what you're looking forward to ahead of Saudi Arabia on this weekend, the end of the triple header, because we could talk about that in our race preview on Thursday. Dan, if I'd like to go and see you do cricket things...
Yeah, you can have a little look at danjaz or danjaz.com if you'd like to have a look there as well. You can watch YouTube videos and TikToks and all these other kind of different things. I'm just trying new things at the minute. I'm just having fun with it, you know?
He's trying them. What can we say?
Trying it.
And then if you want to come watch me play games, or this week, if you're listening to this early, you can come and watch me build a Lego Mercedes. I think it's the W14 on stream this week. So,
is it a real one?
That doesn't matter. What's real at the end of the day anyway? None of this is real. It's all just a figment of our imagination.
Let's go.
Anyway, we will see everybody on Thursday. Lapdown Pod on Insta and TikTok and YouTube. You know that by now, and you know to go and leave us a review as well. Dan, you need to have a word with that wheel, my son, and we'll see you on Thursday.
I'm buttering that wheel up.
Butter it up.